Okay, so there was some question about what my build was like for PSO2 with Gunner. So here we go. We're gonna go ahead and take a look over here real quick. My class skills look like this for the Gunner. Um, I've got 3 in range power because you kind of have to. Over here, and I haven't played Gunner in like a couple of weeks now, just because I'm trying to work on other classes right now. But twin machine gun mastery 5 of 5 is super important. It's going to increase our attack power in general. Dive roll shot also super important. You should just constantly be moving. You pretty much don't ever want to sit still. Showtime is really good, but you only really need it too. Twin machine gun focus is going to let you keep having that damage going. You're going to use Showtime pretty much anytime you're not chain triggering, sometimes even while you're chain triggering. You want Showtime Star going so that you can just be gaining tons and tons of PP all the time with Encore Time and Time Save both going, because it makes it so that if you do get hit, it doesn't hurt as bad in terms of your focus gauge, but also so that if you don't get hit, you can just stay in Showtime. The real bread and butter of this build, though, is the chain trigger. You want this at 10 of 10 and everything else associated with it maxed out. You're pretty much always, like, unless you're mobbing, you're pretty much always going to want to be using a chain trigger all the time. You're going to want to try and lock it onto like a weak point, but if you don't hit a weak point, it's not the end of the world. But you're going to do your chain trigger. As soon as that hits 100, you're going to want to hit it with a chain finisher, and you're going to want all this built up. Over here, we have our stylish roll up. It basically means that you're going to be doing more damage while you're rolling around in the sky, shooting to build up either your chain or your PP or your focus, those sorts of things. So you should pretty much be rolling nonstop if you're fighting things. There's not really any reason not to. It avoids taking damage, and you're going to be doing more damage while you're doing it. Sure, you have those occasional rolls that get you into like a slowdown bullet time mode, but even then, that's not that big a deal. Stylish roll finisher allows you to use a PA button to do extra damage, and this is really like anytime you're not chaining, this is kind of actually what you want to be doing to some degree, especially if you're not really right up close and in the face of the enemy. And this gives you additional damage on perfect attacks. Over here, you want point blank range boost up to 10 and up to 5 here, and you want your criticals here. Those are going to keep you fighting really up close and personal, which is super important because that's where a lot of your damage comes from. Perfectionist is good because it causes you to do more damage. Again, another 20% extra damage, basically, for having your HP be pretty full. And then high time is really quite good too, because it basically makes your showtime better when you're doing that. So that's what the gunner side of things looks like. Sure, I don't have all the points in it yet that I could, but that's really all there is to it. Attack PP Restorate, somewhat useful, but you could move that somewhere else if you wanted to. The other half of this build is the hunter side of things. On the hunter side of things, you're really focused primarily on, and I have too much in HP up right now. If I do decide to spend a skill reset anytime soon, that'll be something I fix. But really where your bread and butter of this is going to come from is your perfect attack bonus right there. Grants damage to your non-technique perfect attacks. Your Fury stance is a thing that you're going to want. It's going to give you passive damage bonus. Like, sure, you're going to take more damage until you get all that maxed up. Once you get maxed up, you take normal amount of damage, though. So once that hits 10 of 10, you're not taking extra damage anymore, and it's going to give you 10% more range damage. Over here, you're going to get another 5% range damage, and then another 5% right there. Perfect Fury bonus right there causes you to do an extra 10% damage when you've got Fury attack going. Critical Fury causes you to have 25% more crits. All of that's super, super good. Perfect attack bonus raises your perfect attacks right there. So perfect attacks are really, really good. Over here, you've got your first attack, first arts perfect attack addition, things like that. Turns your first attack into a perfect attack every time. So that's all good. Over here, getting to the point where you can use automate is super important because it just will keep you alive a lot of time. And hunter physique is really good. When you get that maxed out, the chances are you're not going to get knocked down when you're using that. So when you're building your chain, you're wanting to use that so that you don't get knocked out and lose your chain time. And that's with the hunter side of things. So when you're building this, it's really important though to make sure you're not putting points into things like ranged power up, because that's going to cause you to not take or not like have as much you're not going to be doing as much damage. It's a flat bonus to your damage, which is okay when you're low level, but as you start to get higher level, that percentage damage is going to do so much more damage is really what it comes down to. That flat damage boost doesn't compare to doing like an extra 10% or even an extra 1% damage. As far as your rings go, I personally like to use stylish roll, and that right there is gonna mean that you can roll forward as well, so you can just constantly be rolling. And then I use HP Restorate. It just kind of tops you off all the time for that HP bonus that you get from that gunner skill. As far as your units go, I'm using these. They're okay. They're not amazing. They're not awful. But a lot of people like to have more PP than I do. I don't know. I don't need to use that much PP. And then as far as what my skill tree looks like, I guess I could get one of those out and show, or not skill tree, but my photon arts go for. Let's take a look at that real quick and pull out. Sure. So my normal attack is on X, and then Gunslinger Spin. This thing is super good. It pulls enemies into you so that they get closer to you. It also gives you a little bit of vertical boost, so you get a little vertical travel, which is really, really good for when you are trying to get higher up in the air, because I pretty much never want to be on the ground as a gunner. I'd rather be up in the air so that things aren't hitting me, and because anytime you're taking a hit, that's less time you're doing damage. I've got my weapon action right there, which is the forward roll, or the roll in general. Satellite aim is kind of your bread and butter for finishing your chain. You get your chain up to 100, you have satellite aim 10, you are in close range, you're level 75, you're probably looking at doing 100,000 plus damage per hit. Using this hits twice, you can probably get 2 to 4 of these off in the few seconds that you have as you start your chain finisher. Grim Barrage is used a lot for your travel. It's basically, it doesn't really matter what level it is. You're just going to use that to travel around to get from point A to point B. And then Desperado Dance is the other half of your mob cleanup. So if you alternate your Gunslinger Spin, it pulls enemies in, and then Desperado Dance just kills them all super, super fast. So that's kind of what my build looks like on this. I do have a couple of different weapons I use for different situations, but that's more or less what my build is looking like right now. That could change as we get more stuff unlocked, like the critical ring and that sort of stuff. Hopefully you found that helpful and whatnot. And if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a message. See ya.